Schumann's miracle.
No, when you suggested to meet me here in Portugal, I thought this could be a good position, because a good location, because not only it's a very beautiful monument that very important to the history of my country, but because it's so closely linked to Europe and the European Union. It was here, this very place, that the Treaty of Accession to the European Community was signed in 85. So when the European Union was 10 members only, and that day Portugal and Spain became the 11th and the 12th member. I remember all the prime ministers of Europe, from Belgium it was Wilfred Martens, came here. So very important moment, accession to the European Community, and then I participated as president of the Commission, the signing of the Lisbon Treaty. And I think it's important, this Lisbon Treaty. Why? Don't forget how we had the Lisbon Treaty, because we had the project of a constitution. It failed because it was rejected in two countries, France and the Netherlands. They voted against. And so at that time, I was Commission President. I remember many analysts, many commentators, those who are always making negative prophecies, the end of Europe, the end of the euro, all the time, apocalyptic views. There are people like that. And they were saying the European Union will not be able to solve the institutional problem. Now it's impossible. The constitution failed, there it's impossible to have a new treaty. The reality is that afterwards we found a way, always with creativity and compromise. It was not easy, but I was part of all those negotiations. Angela Merkel, the declaration in Berlin. It was not easy. We had to discuss the issue with Irish, they voted twice. With the Polish, it was not easy, the government. With the president of Czech Republic at that time, he was an Eurosceptic. But at the end, we've got the Lisbon Treaty, showing that we could be 27 or 28 members. Now we are 27 for the reasons well known. So from that point of view, I think it was a very important moment for the European Union, and it's linked also this monastery, not because it's a monastery, but because it's such an important place. Is beautiful. Is linked to it. We should never forget one thing. The reason for the creation of the European community was peace. And that was the genius of Jean Monnet and others, was we are going to achieve peace through economic means, creating a solidarité de fait, a de facto solidarity, creating economic interdependence. It's a very simple idea, but it's great. So, and as you know, it started with the coal and steel community when France, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, and Italy accepted to pool their sovereignty, and give that authority not to the countries, to the governments, but to an independent authority, what will become later the Commission, the high authority. And this is one of the most, I think, in the history of international relations, one of the greatest moments ever. It's such a simple idea, but great, and until now it has worked. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, we had the recent experience of war in Europe, from Bosnia and Herzegovina to Ukraine and Georgia. But between the members of the European Union, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and all our history of Europe was a history of wars, by the way. We are probably the bloodiest continent in the world. If you look historically, wars, the biggest war until now was the Second World War, killed 7 times more people than the first, and the First World War was bigger in terms of casualties than all the wars ever existed. So, in fact, Europe is a continent made on wars, from empires and destruction and hate and so on. The fact that the European community was able, at least among its members, to keep peace, the biggest period ever of peace in our continent, and also to somehow promote it outside, even if it's not perfect, we have not all the means. I think it's something we should be proud of. We are a community of democracies, and so if one country does not respect the values and the principles and the norms that are in the treaty, Article 2 of the treaty is a principle of pluralism, democracy, rule of law, principle of non-discrimination, pluralism, equality of rights between men and women, all is there in the treaty.
Are you worried? Are you worried?
I am because it's one very difficult issue. It's one of the most difficult issues because on one side I have no doubts that the European Commission was and is trying to do its best. At the same time, the truth is that it's very difficult to make criticisms outside one country because sometimes that reinforces precisely the nationalist trends that we want to fight. So it has to be done in a very intelligent way, not in terms of propaganda or politics, but in terms of a serious political conversation, but at the same time respecting the treaties, respecting the norms. If not, there is a danger. There is a danger of, in fact, achieving exactly the opposite. Because if we appear just as kind of giving lessons to others, that is so easy for those politicians who want to manipulate to defend the pride of the country against those guys from Brussels that are imposing on us. So that's why it requires a lot of sophistication, and it's not easy. Anyhow, I believe the European institutions, from the Commission to the Council to the Parliament, are doing all they can to keep those members, but of course to make them respect the principles and the values of the European Union. But when I saw the collapse of the Berlin Wall and also the transformation, the perestroika movement in Poland, and all the transformation, the people fleeing Hungary to go to other parts of Europe, I was also extremely happy. And so I think it was the right thing to do, the European community, to integrate or to incorporate those countries. Because now we have a truly continental dimension. And I know that sometimes today people say, oh, it's not going well. I think it's a mistake because Europe, of course there are problems, but politically we have to think always counterfactually. Would it be better for Europe if you have only European Union of 6, 9 or 12 or 15 countries? No, I think it's better to have 27 now that the British democratically decided to go. So we are 27 countries, hopefully some more will join. And so we have a truly continental dimension. And for me, I've been saying that all my life, I mean, it's the only way for us, Europeans, to protect our interests and our values. When you see the United States on one side, still, I would say, the most important power, and China on the other. These are, in the world, for me, there are three poles of power. United States, China, and Europe, European Union. Russia is a declining power, but we should, of course, be attentive to Russia. I think it's a mistake to, like President Obama said, Russia is a regional power. I don't think it was the brightest moment of Obama. Russia, we have to understand, it's the biggest country on earth, and it's also part of the European civilization. So it's important to manage that relationship intelligently. Having said that, now we have the European Union still as a major economic power, trade, and not only in trade, investment, and in many other issues. But politically, not yet punching at the level I would like to see it punching. But anyhow, much more now than 20 years ago.
Yes, indeed.
I met Putin so many times. And as you know, at some moment, unfortunately it's no longer the case, we were working in a very good spirit, and at least we thought, with Russia, helping reforms, economic but also democratic reforms, with President Putin, then President Medvedev, then afterwards came again President Putin. So I had many meetings, sometimes one-on-one, only with the interpreter. And one day, Putin asked me, look, and what if Russia joins the European Union? They said, I'm sorry, but you are too big for that. We can and should have as close as possible a political association and economic integration, like, for instance, the one we offered afterwards to Ukraine. So, political association, economic integration, but you are too big for, and I believe it. So, Russia is a power in itself. I mean, Russia geographically is the biggest, by far, the biggest country on earth. So, and it's
Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia.
Those countries, I think they should join, and they are in a way. It's a question of time. I believe Turkey will not be a member because, I mean, clearly the evolution of Turkey is on a different path. At some point we have tried, and they know they will not be a member. I don't think really they will. At least this government is not considering that.
Is that a shame?
Having said, I think in a way, I mean, it's a difficult question. It's a very difficult question because Turkey, I mean, there is always the danger of understanding that in terms of religion. The reality is that we already have many Muslim people in our societies, and Albania, for instance, if they join, they are a majority of Muslims, and others. So, but Turkey is so big, and in a way so powerful because of the position it occupies, that the reality is, and we have to be honest and objective. We cannot lie on those matters. We have to be honest with people. We are a community of democracies. So we cannot integrate one country when our people do not want that country to be part of it. That's as simple as that. And I'm absolutely sure that the majority of, in many of our countries, the majority of those citizens do not want to see Turkey as a member. And as you know, to become a member of the European Union, you need unanimity of member states. So let's say if Austria, just to give an example, where this discussion was extremely, and still is very, if Austria says Turkey no, it means no. But in that case, it's not only Austria, I'm afraid. As you know, today there is an overall debate in general is about how open we are. And I think that's probably the biggest issue of our times. Are we going to be open or are we going to close? What is the message we are conveying? Are we going to be narrow-minded, nationalistic, protectionist, xenophobic, chauvinist, or are we going to be open to others? I'm on the side of openness, generally speaking. I'm on that side. Having said that, I'm no longer in politics, but as a politician, I think we have to be attentive also to the concerns of our people. And the reality is that, and I think this is quite clear now, that our societies in Europe are ready to accept some level of migration, but not too much migration, namely illegal migration. And rightly or wrongly, in some of those countries, there is an equivalence made with illegal migration and potential terrorists and so on. So it's a very, very sensible and difficult debate. So I think each case is a case, but I believe we should make a clear distinction between refugees on humanitarian issues, because of humanitarian reasons, and in that case we should simply be open. By the way, it's the Convention on Refugees. So if Syrian people that is persecuted by that awful regime comes to our countries and they have not the conditions to live there, I think it's our moral duty to accept them. If there are economic migration, it depends on our absorption economic capacity. Because if in our countries we have, for instance, a very high level of unemployment, we have to be honest, we cannot receive everybody in the world. So it's probably not politically correct to say it, but it's true. If not, we are going, in fact, to feed more nationalism, more hate, more xenophobia. So, and that's why it has to be calibrated. But I think now in Europe we still have, we have the means, we have the capacity, also demographically, because demographically Europe is going in not a good direction, including my country. Portugal is one of the countries that is getting more old in Europe, very low level of fertility. So where we need foreign workers. So I think there is still room to have a reasonable policy of migration, and that should be coordinated at European level, but also accepting different situations, because for obvious reasons. By the way, now because of Afghanistan, the government, it's a socialist government. It's not my party, but they already said that they are ready to accept, and in fact they are inviting Afghan people to come here. And not only, very important, not only the government, the church, the different churches, the civic societies, NGOs, local powers, municipalities. In the interior of Portugal, you have in fact the problem of desertification, because the population is becoming too old. There are not enough people. I was born in Lisbon. My family is from Trás-os-Montes, the most primitive part of Portugal, northeast, so close to Spain, close to Galicia. It's probably the poorest part of Portugal. Very primitive, very beautiful, but very. And you go to those small villages, including the village where my family comes, and you see almost nobody there, only very old people, because they were going before to France, to Switzerland. Afterwards, they were going to Lisbon or to Porto. So, in fact, it makes sense. And the municipalities there, they are saying, we can welcome people from other countries. In fact, we need them to have the schools open and so on. So, from that point of view, I think Portugal is on the right side in terms of generosity. But I, without arrogance, because I understand that some countries have so many migrants that created also another. I'm not saying that by definition the Portuguese are more generous, not at all. But what I'm telling you is that until now, in the public debate, almost nobody puts in question this politics of openness, from the center left to the center right. There are some people in the very far right, it's very small, that say, no, it's enough. But generally speaking, Portuguese remain open, and I think that's good.
Yeah.
If I had to choose from an historic perspective, the most important moments, at least of the second half of the 20th century, it will be 74, the Portuguese coronation revolution, and 86, the accession to the European community. Because it was not just the issue of being in a more competitive market. For us, and for me, it's much more than that. It's an overall modernization. It's the fact that we are part of a family that is you can be Portuguese, Spanish, or French, or Belgian, or Dutch, or German, or Italian. But, and for us, at least for me and my generation, many people, was a kind of to be amputated from the rest. I mean, and this is not good. I mean, you are
Because
a part because of the dictatorship. The European Union, as you know, started with the 6 founding members, so the 3 Benelux members, including, and France, Germany, and Italy. But then, for us here in Portugal, we felt all the time we were part of Europe. In fact, Portugal was part of EFTA, European Free Trade Association, differently from Spain. But we could not join because we were not a democracy. So for us, coming to the European Union, at least for most of us, was to be where we should be, have been since the beginning, but we could not because of the political reasons. So Portugal sees itself as part, of course, of European culture, European civilization, European history. And then what happened was that when we joined, there was no, when we asked to join, there was no very important structural funds or this program for resilience and money. No. The reason to join the European community, at least from the Portuguese side, was not to get some money, as sometimes some people in the north might think. It was political reason, political. And we wanted to be a normal democracy, a European country like others. Don't forget one thing, it was not just the students that were more open or intellectuals, because Portugal had a lot of migration to France and to other countries in Europe because of the country was very poor, and so many people were. Paris at that time, there were more people in Paris than in our second city, Porto, more Portuguese. So also these people, with a relatively low level of education, they knew what was, the more advanced Europe. Yeah, it was not for me. Of course, it was for the European Union, but I was very proud, and in fact, I've already said it several times. When people ask what was the most important moment for you in the European Commission, it was to have the honor, the privilege of receiving the Nobel Peace Prize together with Herman Van Rompuy, President of the European Council, on behalf of the European Union. And I think it came at a very important moment because we were fighting, it was 2012, still the effects of the great financial crisis, many people criticizing the rise of populism and nationalism. And it was a signal of confidence and for people to remember what the European Union is about.
Schuman's miracle.